ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dungeon Master Solutions podcast. This is our fourth podcast. This is DMKC. Today, once again, I have my good friend Ian. Ian, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here. We got an awesome topic today.
Yes, today we are going to be talking about our first sessions of DMing Dungeons & Dragons, specifically DMing. And mine was in 2013. When was yours, Ian?
Oh, goodness. It must have been 2014, 2015.
Yes.
Right after 5e launched.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we get into the deets, let's try to parse out our feelings here. So, right off the bat, what made you want to sit behind the DM screen, Ian?
Okay, so long story short, I had gotten into D&D and I was like getting really into it, but I kept on making these characters with these like amazing backstories, and then of course like the campaigns would just break apart within 1 or 2 sessions, and I'm like, there goes another one, just slide them back in the drawer.
and you really wanted just a chance to bust them out.
Yeah, and I was like, I think if there's gonna be any long-lasting story that I want to tell, I think I'm gonna have to get behind the screen and make it happen, pretty much.
So like the Thanos, like, I'll do it myself.
Yes, yeah. So I was like, because I think you're gonna reference this too, but storytelling is such a cool experience, and collaborative storytelling together and kind of bouncing ideas off each other just makes it that much better.
Mm-hmm. And as human beings, we've been doing it since we were cavemen. And
yes.
I remember when I was at daycare when I was a kid, we were playing proto D&D, coming up with cool ideas in our heads and fighting each other with sticks and running around. And it was personally my experience with it, man, is that like as soon as I saw that it could be done, I immediately was interested. I was like, yes, I want to do what he's doing right there.
Yeah.
Well, okay, then my second question for you is this. Were you nervous? Was it a nerve-wracking experience for you, your first session?
I think I kind of was, and I still kind of am, like even though I've been, DMing for a while, even, I get nervous before every session starts, like, man, did I plan enough? Usually it's because like, oh man, I didn't have enough time to plan a lot, so I didn't have enough time to get everything ready. But by the time I do the recap and everything like that, I'm like, okay, we're in it. Let's do this. We're having fun.
As soon as you say last time on D&D, we're back in it, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure, man. Yeah. Well, cool. All right. So now that we've got the basics, lay it on us. What was going on in your first session of D&D? Your DMing D&D.
I think this was like the 3rd or 4th time a campaign had ended or something like that. I'm like, oh man, and I was itching by this point. It had been like 6 months or something like that. I'm like, man, I need to play some D&D. I need to play some D&D. So I hopped into Roll20 and I was like just looking for a game at first. And submission after submission, I was like, no one accepted me or anything like that. And after a while, I'm like, man, I think I'm going to have to start my own game here and everything like that. So, watched a bunch of YouTube videos, played around with the system, and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. I'm going to run this, cause I had Lost Mine of Phandelver. I had the box set, like the physical form. And this is back in the day when Roll20, you had to input all the stats by yourself. You had to be like, okay, goblin, okay, plus, 12 strength.
Nothing was integrated.
No, nothing was integrated yet. So I had to type in all the stats and everything like that. The one good thing about it is you get really familiar with all the abilities, all the health, all the creatures, all the stats, because you have to input everything by hand.
And when it shows up in your storytelling, when you have just that innate knowledge, when you know the text front to back.
Yeah, yeah. As an aside, I used to actually record myself reading the adventure in my phone, and then literally while I'm I guess I was kind of nervous, so literally while I'm driving around the car or doing something, I'm listening to myself reading the adventure so I could just know it.
Dude, I mean excellent note-taking, like study skills. Like
Yeah.
for our listeners out there in high school, listen up. That's how
Yeah.
you learn something. That's how you know it front and back.
So I was like, okay, I'm ready for this adventure. Let me just, put an ad out there and see if anyone, I'm sure no one will sign up, but let me see if anyone will even be interested in playing some D&D.
You said you were doing Lost Mines of Phandelver?
Yeah, on
Okay.
Roll20.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so of course I put the ad up and everything like that, and I said like, first time DM, I just need some work, practicing being a DM, just come in if you feel like you want to play some D&D with me. And I got like 25 applicants like start like pouring in. I'm like, oh man, okay. And then I narrowed it down to like 8. So my first session, I'm like, oh man, we've got 8 people here.
Wow, dude. Wow, your first game was 8 PCs.
Yeah, it was
That's
awesome.
impressive, dude.
It was awesome. Like one guy was from Australia, one guy was from Canada, another guy he was playing from the Bahamas, but he was like originally from California. And then we had like a 14-year-old kid. He's like, I've never played D&D before, but I heard it was awesome. And, if you'll take me like, and teach me how to play, I'm like, yeah, man, come on in. We're all just going to have like a blast and everything like that. So we start going through Lost Mines, I'm like, you've all been hired. You're here to, you're on the road to Phandalin, oh man, an arrow just hit the cart, there's dead horses up ahead, ambush, and goblins are pouring out and everything like that. And of course they like mop the floor because there's like 8 of them. There was like 4 goblins and everything like that.
And in everyone's first session, no one knows how to balance an encounter. So it's just like, here are 2 goblins. Hopefully you won't die.
Yes, and in fact, I was going like very by the book. I was like, okay, well, there are only 4 goblins here. Okay, all right, you guys have found that. And I was like, oh, and there's a trail up here. And then they find like the little cave with all the goblins. They find the tribe had come from this, so they start exploring the cave. And literally, they're going through. They're just like killing everything. They're like mopping the floor with all these. And at the very end of the session, I'm having a blast. They're all having fun. I was like looking at the treasure list, in the pamphlet, in the booklet, and I was like, okay, there's a treasure chest over there. You find this, and then something clicked in my head. Like at that moment, I was like, wait a minute. They don't know what's in this. I can put whatever I want in this treasure chest. Oh. And like, I got inspired, and one of the players, his dad had walked out on him like when he was a kid and left him in the slums and everything like that. I was like, you pick up a ring and you look at it closely. This is your dad's ring. And he was like, what? And I was like, oh, I'm like, this is it. This is DMing. This is the best.
Dude, the hallelujah moment, the spark where it's just like, oh, I can do anything. Yes, it's such a good feeling.
Yeah. So we ended the session there, and then at like a cliffhanger, and then 3 of them messaged me back like, let's continue this and everything like that. And so that's how I ended up running my first game and then finishing my first campaign. I took them through the rest of Lost Mine of Phandelver. And then we ended up doing Storm King's Thunder too. Like we had stayed and told some epic stories.
How long is the Lost Mines of Phandelver?
It didn't take long. It took us like, you only go up to level 5, so you can really like breeze through. I kind of stripped.
Is it like, would you say maybe like 4 or 5 sessions or shorter than that?
You can do that. Yeah, they have got some side quests, so you can skip those if you want. But really, it's like you go to the town, you find the mine, and literally it's like a little dungeon crawl, and then you go to the end of the mine. But I kind of, once I figured out, oh, you can do anything. Like I figured out, I like literally like changed the whole adventure. I'm like, his dad was here like 50 years earlier, and he tried to take out these bad guys, and now he, and stuff like that. I was like, oh man.
The tinkering and the tweaking.
Yeah, it took me about, I think we did 3 months, and then Storm King's Thunder had just come out, and then like, let's do this, guys. And then by that time, Roll20 had caught up and like, oh, hey, we have everything integrated now. And I'm like, yes. And so then we went through Storm King's Thunder, took like 9 months or something like that. So, and I only used like 10% of the book because it's thick. But yeah, but what about you, man?
So my first session of Dungeons & Dragons, it was in 2013, as I said, I was playing 4th edition, and because that was the edition that my DM was using, and the adventure was called The Reavers of Harkenwold. And it's like a
Whoa.
2-part adventure. And it really just set the bar for, like, this adventure kind of set the bar for what I, even to this day, kind of think about what an adventure should do. And so, I mean, the vibe of the adventure is like the players show up to this small little country, and there was a deposed ruler. The new one has risen to power. He's evil. And so it's like the players show up, and okay, so session 1. All right, so I wanted to give you just a little snippet. I'll give you a little snippet. All right, this is what the text. See, I really enjoy this adventure for many reasons. One of them being it tells you some of what to read specifically. And so it says, you arrive in Harkenwold in the middle of the day. It's a broad, lightly settled valley between 2 arms of the Harken Forest. You haven't traveled more than a mile or 2 into the valley before trouble appears. Rounding a bend in the road, you spy a pillar of smoke climbing into the clear blue sky. The source, hidden by rolling hills, is roughly a mile along a dirt track that intersects the road. And so they go on to discover it's a burning farmhouse, and they go and they see these brigands, and they have these gray circles on black cloaks, and they're the Iron Circle brigands. Anyway, so got to do a lot of storytelling and building all that up. But yeah, so the players go, they heroically fight off the Iron Circle brigands. They meet Ilyana, the lady of the farm, and she, sends them on this quest to go and, meet the other people in this little country, and eventually rise up and fight the evil bad guy.
Yes, depose that tyrant.
Yes. And so I'm, and as we were like discussing this topic, I was thinking back to what was in my mind going into this, and I think similar to you, I played it exactly by the book. It's just luckily this adventure tells you it's like 2 bad guys and 1 dog, and it's like, okay, I'm going to use these exactly. Right. And I in the middle of it, like you said, once you're in the game, you forget and you roll, and you just, you're playing along and you're telling the story. And I felt like, the time just flew by. And at the end of the adventure, so I told you they meet the farmer lady, and she explains to them, where they should go next. And on the map near Ilyana's farm, there's a place called the Druid's Grove. Ooh. And so they suggested to go and see the druid in the Druid's Grove. And the players were like, okay, we go there. And I remember thinking to myself, oh God, what next? I started flipping through my book, and I'm like,
because it didn't have anything statted out. It just said Druid's Grove.
Well, it did, yes. And I had the stats for the NPC. Yeah. Who is in the Druid's Grove, like the druid, like role playing stuff and whatnot. But it was just like, oh. And so I was like looking at the map, like figuring out how far it is and what I should say and what I should narrate. Eventually I was just like, you go there and it is a Druid's Grove that you see, and then you go inside of it. Nice. So eventually I had to just work it out. But it's one of the things you learn in D&D is the ability to kind of just move the plot from the interesting thing immediately as fast as you can to the next interesting thing, and keep the verisimilitude.
It is interesting, like those adventures. Before, I was like, oh man, they didn't write anything. What am I supposed to do if they go here? What am I supposed to do if they go there? And now I'm like, oh, I can just, now that I'm more experienced, I'm like, oh, cool. This is a cool place they could go to where cool stuff could happen. And, everything doesn't have to be actually spelled out for me.
So one thing I do want to mention that I really love about these adventures is that it gives you role-playing tips on how to role-play the NPCs. And so I really took a lot of time, studying how to role-play the woman farmer, in spite of the fact that they talked to her for like 2 minutes. And they're like, okay, go on the quest. One fun tidbit that really stuck out in my mind as I was thinking back to like the fun of me running this adventure was like the quote unquote quest giver, kind of like the leader of the uprising against the bad guy. And his name's Dar Gramath. And I always loved how they described him. So I'm going to tell you how they described him in the adventure. And that is, Dar talks fast. He doesn't break for questions, and he doesn't repeat himself. He expects to be listened to. He's confident and optimistic, like a football coach who thinks the heroes are his star players. And so that always stuck out in my mind. So I always try to have in my games an NPC quest giver who's cool and wants to lift the players up. Because at the end of the day,
give me 3 more plays.
John, give me 10. You weren't supposed to burn that farm down. All right.
I'm kind of interested now who wrote that adventure, if it was so good.
The Reavers of Harkenwold. It doesn't have. Usually, adventures have the author on them. It says the design is Richard Baker.
Oh,
which I don't know who he is, but it says additional design and development by Christopher Perkins, who I do know. He is a great DM. I like him a lot. But yeah, he was actually kind of a big inspiration for me. He was the kind of premier DM for Wizards of the Coast when I was, getting into the hobby.
Same. I was like watching YouTube videos. I was like, oh, this is how it works. Okay. But of course, those people they look like they know what they're doing like at all times. And they plan for everything. But yeah. Well,
awesome, man. I super appreciate it. I think that's all the time we have for today. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Dungeon Master Solutions. I am DMKC. My guest today was Ian. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, and one last word, just jump into it. Become a DM. You can do it. It's scary at first, but once you get into it, you're going to enjoy it for sure.
Don't be afraid.
Yes. Bye, guys.
All right. See you next time.